let's welcome our guest. He is Barrister Evans Ufeli. He is a legal practitioner. So glad to have you on the show.
Good morning.
Good morning and welcome to the program.
Thank you.
All right, so let's get right into it this morning. What are the key factors, contributing to the backlog? We have so many backlog cases in the Nigerian courts, and how can they be addressed to improve access to justice?
Well, the backlogs in our courts, so many factors contribute to it, not just one. First, the courts are not enough. That is it, the courts are not enough for 200 million people, just like the police, number of the policemen are not enough for the population. Same way, the courts are not enough for the population. Okay? And another factor is that we have new layers of crime. Okay? Yes, before 2009, there was no crime such as terrorism in Nigeria. There was no crime such as kidnapping in our law book. You understand? There was none like banditry and the rest of it. But now we have new layers of crime. Okay? Also, we have a system that, a criminal justice system that is slow. Criminal justice administration starts from arrests. Upon arrest, there's what they call prosecution. Now, when the police arrest, oftentimes they don't do their investigation before they arrest. They arrest first and they start to look for evidence to prosecute. Okay? Unlike in the West, very civilized democracies, where before you are arrested, investigation has been concluded on you. So within 24 hours or 48 hours, you are charged to court. Here, the police will go and obtain an order to keep you in detention while they go look for evidence against you. So that's one of the factors. Another factor also is that after arraignment, sometimes the bail conditions are so onerous. They are tedious. So once the defendant is remanded in prison, sometimes it's asked to go and get 2 sureties. The 2 sureties must be civil servants of level 18 that have houses in Ikoyi and VI. You see that kind of condition. A civil servant that will have house in Ikoyi and VI. Civil servant. Okay? So when you begin to have such kind of bail condition, it becomes very difficult. They will now be crowded in the prison. Their case is neither moving forward nor moving backward. So the congestion is there. Then the issue of amendment. The court, sometimes lawyers file applications upon applications upon applications, and the judge will have no choice but to amend cases, adjourn cases repeatedly. Another factor is that the prison custody. In prison custody, there is rot in the prison. If you don't pay money to warders and sort yourself out as an inmate, they will not bring you to court. So even if the court is ready, the prosecution is ready, the defendant may not be brought to court. Because in the prison, there's a rot going on there where inmates have to sort the prison warders to enable them get a space in the Black Maria that is bringing inmates to court. So you see this. So access to justice is stifled because of so many factors, not just one. There are 3 institutions that man the criminal justice system. 3 institutions: the courts, the prisons, and the police, or law enforcement agencies, which include EFCC, all other ones. So these 3 institutions are hurting. They are sick. So access to justice is stifled because of the rot that is within these 3 institutions that make up the criminal justice system.
All right.
So,
very well said. The picture you just painted is so graphic. It reminds me of a story that is beginning to die down. between Bobrisky, the celebrity, the cross-dresser, Bobrisky, legal practitioners, and then authorities in correctional centers. But there are a number of things Olumide mentioned just before you came on board, including a backlog of cases, and then people are waiting trials endlessly. And then he said that the slow adoption of technology within the judiciary aggravates these issues. Would you agree?
Very well. We have stenographers during trial, okay? We have stenographers. Now we do virtual hearing. We do virtual hearing, but that's for civil cases. Because you cannot do virtual hearing for criminal cases for now. But that would have been very good had it been the prisons are working effectively, because the courts have facilities for virtual hearing. You can actually do hearing from the courts. The court and the prison can actually connect via online, such that you can conduct proceedings without the warders bringing the inmates to court. Yes, you can do that. They do that in the US. Okay, so that you are not on the road all the time, risking the possibility of the inmate escaping. Okay, so the issue of technology is not just attributed to the court. As far as I'm concerned, the court is ahead of the other two institutions. I have never seen a computer in a police station. I have never in Nigeria. I have never. I don't know whether you have seen one.
Well,
Okay.
Well, I've not been that much there.
I've never seen. But if you go to the prison, almost the same thing. But when you come to the court, we have internet facilities. We do virtual hearing in civil cases. So it's not the court now. It's those other two institutions that make up the criminal justice system that need to up their game so that you can have technology, deploy technology for the fast administration of justice to create access to justice. It's very important. One other factor is that the government will need to fund these institutions effectively and monitor the facilities they have to increase visibility and to increase the smooth running of justice in Nigeria. See, access to justice is very critical. It contributes to the economy. When investors want to come and invest in your country, one of the things they look at is your judicial system, your criminal justice system. In case they have a case of theft or pilfering, they are looking at how well your country is structured to deal with such cases.
Very well.
And then they're looking at all that to determine investment. So many things are tied to these three institutions.
All right.
If people get away with offenses in your country, it's difficult for investors to trust it.
Okay.
All right. Earlier on, also before you came in, I talked about how some people have been incarcerated for so many years that they've even served the time they're supposed to spend if they had been prosecuted. But I'd like to ask this question: how do delays in this justice system, how does it affect the whole, procedures in court?
It does affect it because when an inmate is on a waiting trial, and same have been there for so long, sometimes for more than the time he ought to have spent if he had been convicted early enough. Okay, it affects because at the end of the day, the judge usually will consider when he was put in detention. Okay, sometimes in their judgment they include those time he has stayed before. But what that does is that it crowds the prison. It crowds the prison. Do you know that in our prisons, when they want to sleep, they file in. They file themselves in like when you open a sardine and you see how the seafood is filed into the can. That is how they sleep, and it's difficult. It makes the place crowded.
Yeah.
A lot of issues will begin to happen. Issues like pay money to get a VIP cell or a VVIP cell or to get a better condition because the condition of, and the federal government recently, last year, came up with this idea that they are tired of feeding inmates, that states should build their own prisons so that all those who committed state offenses should go to the state prisons. Okay? So that's because you are not going to have more people in the prison. Federal government will now have to spend more money. An inmate is a citizen.
Yeah.
All the rights, except the right to movement, that applies to every citizen, apply to an inmate, except the right to voluntarily go to anywhere he wants to go to by his own volition. That's the only one that is stifled by prison term. Every other right, the right to life, the right to freedom of speech, liberty, all that applies to that person. So the federal government will now have to take over that responsibility to feed them and keep them alive until they face trial or face whatever it is. One other factor that is hindering also, that is crowding the place and making justice not accessible, is the fact that you have a lot of condemned inmates. Inmates that are already sentenced to death, but because there's no hangman in Nigeria, that is one. And two, governors are not signing death warrants. Governors are not signing death warrants. If somebody has to be, once the court has pronounced the person to die by hanging, maybe it's a robbery case or murder or homicide, and the person has been found guilty and be pronounced to die by hanging, the next thing you discover is that nobody is ready to put his hand there again. The governor will not sign the execution warrant. Even if the governor signs the execution warrant, there's no hangman in Nigeria that will do the hanging. So they just keep them there for as long as possible. They'll be there for so many years, occupying space that they ought to have used to, house inmates and give them better condition and space. So that's also a factor. Okay, so if we are not going to be adherent to capital punishment, we should remove it from our laws. Okay, so many countries have removed capital punishment from their laws. So if we are not going to be able to hang people, or we're not going to be able to apply what the law says, we apply to them. So why keep it in our books?
Exactly.
Why keep it? Well, it's of no use. I mean, it's fighting back at us.
Yeah, that's a very good question. That's a very good question.
So,
as we wrap this up, this is solution based. I would like for us to wrap this up with you making your recommendations. So I'll ask, how does the lack of infrastructure in fact, that wasn't the question I was going to ask. What policies then, what reform do you think is needed to ensure that we have an effective judiciary?
Well, first, the Minister for Interior, and the CJN and the IG of police, they are the three people who are affected here. They are the three leaders of these three institutions that make up the criminal justice system. The CJN, Chief Justice of the Federation, the Minister for Interior, and the Inspector General of Police. The three of them need to come together to create this reform. You see this thing they do up before now. The police will go and do their own reform separate. They'll say they are doing police reform. And they have now come out with the Police Act. Whatever reform you do in the police will be stifled by the prison. And when the prison does their own reform, it will stifle court. And when court does their own reform, it will stifle both institutions. So the three institutions will be working at cross purpose. These three institutions are supposed to come together to determine a long-term solution to the problem. And that is to make reforms that will ease transition from what, because there's transition. It starts from arrest. After police have arrested and they have done their investigation, they now prosecute in the court. That's the transition. The court has to be the one that will determine the guilt or innocence of the inmate or defendant. Then when the court is done, the court makes a pronouncement. There's another transition to prison. So in the prison, the other issues. So if you look at the chain, the three institutions must be able to put their heads together for this coming reform. And the reform should be that first, the police must conclude their investigation before arrest, so that they should not keep as citizens of this country more than 24 hours or at most 48 hours as the Constitution provided without charging the person to court. And when they charge to court, they should be ready to commence prosecution immediately. Because sometimes they charge to court hurriedly. When the court adjourns for hearing, the prosecutor will come to court and say his witnesses are not in court, that he cannot go on trial because the witnesses are not available. Then they will keep adjourning. After some time, the IPO that is supposed to be the star witness in the case will be transferred to another place, and they will bring another one. And before you know it, they'll be toiling around this whole thing, and you are not able to get the right proceedings. Okay? Then you move from there, you get to the prison, you have a different narrative entirely. So these three institutions must do independent or joint reform that would lead to a smooth running of the system. They will go to other countries to, just like when you're coming up with policy, you can do comparative analysis with other countries and see how you can make the prison, the police, and the court better for the citizens of the country.
Wow.
Thank you very much, Barrister Evans Ufeli. We do appreciate your thoughts, and of course,
my pleasure.
You've been brilliant.